Welcome to the 19th Chief Delegates meeting. Time is now 9:20 p.m. UTC. We'll start off with basically going through the rounds, what people have been up to, and then we're keen to talk about the latest from Fractally and the network's views on it. Lately, I've just been working on the Fractally white paper, been on the Telegram, trying to push as much info and answer people's questions as possible. And then, just been monitoring the chats and people's feelings. Lovejoy, you're next on my screen. Did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I've just been heads down, communications, ENF, life. I think a lot of us have been on pause, kind of waiting to see the Fractally paper and how that's going to affect life going forward. I've just got this budget sitting there waiting for some more people to point it towards. And we're going to see what happens. It'll be interesting. That's my abbreviated update.
Aaron, you're next.
I sympathize with the holding pattern. My bulk writing is coming to an end, hopefully within the next 24 hours or so. There's just a few things left on the wallet, and then it moves out of my hands and Gray Mess moves back to normal a little bit, which will be nice. I have already started redirecting people back. I think I mentioned this a while ago, toward off of the papers and back into our normal day-to-day efforts. The onboarding stuff we are working on, I'm hoping next month we should have something to show for it. I know it's a lot longer of a timeline than we originally anticipated, but we pretty much stopped everything for the last couple months to work on the papers. Feels like I repeat myself as we go through these, but
you're still scheduled to take some time off soon?
I sure hope so.
All right, we'll talk about getting that approved for you later on.
I appreciate it.
Chris, you're next on my list.
Cool. Yeah, so we did a soft launch of the My Vote EOS campaign. And so that's what I was talking about last week. We decided to not really full-fledged push it out with the Fractally. That was so good advice from those who said here it was probably better to wait. So soft launch, the website's up, myvoteeos.com. And it is everything I talked about last week. And now it's out. So please check out the website. And I think I don't want to waste much time on that for now. And instead, we'll just move on. And then next week, hopefully I'll give a chance to explain it more to the team and we can go into it more detail.
Great. That's very exciting. I'll pull up the page and check it out soon. Randolph, you're next.
We are still building our platform and we are helping out with communication strategy with Mandela launch. That's about it, pretty much.
Jesse.
Hey guys, how's everyone doing? Tuesday was a very interesting day for me. I woke up in the morning, Turkish Hive alerts me that Altcoin Daily, 1.1 million followers, tweeted out the EOS DApp ecosystem image, and with a lot of negative comments. I think it was like over 400 comments. They tweeted it out like 1 a.m. my time, so it's like 8 hours later, kind of late, but we did our best. Turkish Hive was really great. We had these just responding. Super cool to see him tweet that out. So that was very encouraging on the influencer front. And then just was diving into the Fractally white paper. We'll talk about that later. So we have a Russian Hive. That's been a whirlwind because I was so happy to see the Russian Hive has really been finally picking up, and we've got the incentives right, and they've been translating a lot, doing a great job, and then this happens. We also have our Princess Bee, the Chinese Hive, lives in Ukraine for part of the year, and he's there now. And so definitely experienced some delays with that, but we're just trying to be as accommodating as possible and kind of set the right expectations for our bees in the Ukraine-Russian area. I think that's it. I have more that's related to Fractally, but I'll leave it there for now.
Did anyone want to bring up anything else before we do dive into Fractally? Cool. All right, let's dive into Fractally. Maybe we can just talk about like initial thoughts or how we think things went. Chris, you're unmuted. Do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. I have not read much of everything yet. I've briefly glossed over the white paper and the EOS FAQ, which was interesting. I definitely spent what I did spend a lot of time reading was just the Telegram chat that was busy in multiple channels, lots to follow, a lot of negativity. I mean, let's call it what it is. There's a lot of people who had a lot of concerns. And I feel like a lot of it, without knowing really how it's all exactly supposed to work, a lot of it, I think, is just misunderstandings and just not clear delivery of what the scope really is. How exactly is this going to work? Like a 1-page simple FAQ would have been nice, like have that lead out. I think in terms of the comm strategy, there's hopefully some lessons that will be learned from this. And one of them, time needs to be spent when something like this is going to come out. And it's obviously going to be contentious because it touches inflation. That's right there, a contentious subject. Any token holder recognizes that use of inflation is a dilution of their net asset value. So that's sensitive for a lot of people. And some time needs to be spent in advance of releasing these really big things that have a lot of loaded migrating what we're trying to do to support an eventual migration to Fractally. And anyway, so yeah, that's my initial thoughts on that.
Jesse, how about you go next?
Yeah, my initial reaction was quite different. I was kind of admittedly oblivious to the communication kind of issues that Yves LaRose brought up. I was just really diving into the content. The FAQ was I guess my reaction to FAQ is a bit surprising, only because all the other stuff that Dan has proposed had like milestones and timelines. I didn't see that. And in terms of the actual white paper, I've read it through very carefully one time, and I reread the one section I did not understand a second time. I still don't understand it. I can bring that up later, but those are my initial reactions.
Yeah, I haven't gotten all the way through the white paper yet. My initial reactions to the video was good. Really liked that. Yeah, I was kind of disappointed with the communication on the outset. I think I wanted to see more kind of outreach to the community and more kind of, this community's been through a lot, and I'm really sensitive to what everyone's been through. And so I think we're at a time when extra communication goes a long ways, really reaching out and understanding what people's feelings and needs are in various areas of the community when introducing something this massive would pay huge dividends. Came up a little short on that front, but the content is great. I mean, I really love Fractally, and I love, a lot of the ideas in it. I'm a huge fan of, like Dan and I are philosophically very similar. And so I don't have many qualms with the actual thing. I want to see more detail about how it would impact EOS token holders or like what the perceived economic impact would be. But yeah, overall, pretty happy. I haven't made it through the whole white paper, like I said, but it's pretty much what I anticipated would be there. And yeah, it's good stuff.
I haven't read anything that was released on Tuesday yet. I've been caught up on Telegram for the most part, but I'm still stuck on fundamental concerns about the way these things would impact the system, which were announced way earlier before. Questions were brought up and largely unanswered. So the way I view this right now is there's kind of three components. There's this, we're going to change the system, the core EOS IO system. There is the tokenomics portion of it, which includes the inflation and arguably even the BP selection, and that impacts the system, but it's more kind of like a governance thing. So that's kind of the second point. And the third thing is Fractally, which from everything I've read through other people, which, because I haven't read it yet myself, just understanding little bits of it through Telegram, like I want Fractally to succeed. I want it to be like this viable system that attracts users to the core system. So honestly, I don't think I'll have a huge amount of concern on that front. And I'll probably have ideas that could contribute and support and improve that process, but not there personally yet. So out of the three things, I'm kind of looking at these first two to begin with, the impacts to the system and the impacts to the tokenomics. And I'm stuck there without really looking at Fractally too heavily right now. I think the communications could have played a big part in that as well. It seems like everybody's latching on to, like Chris said, tokenomics, and nobody's really talking about the fundamental system changes. And then everybody seems, well, not everybody, many people seem pretty positive about the actual experiment and the application and the, like, what this thing could be if these other two things didn't exist.
And Randall, I did save you for last because I felt like you would have a bit to say about this.
I did, and you know that I reached out to you during this whole thing because I thought the marketing or the delivery was a little lacking. And I think communication was very important, right? I know Aaron pointed that out. We have Fractally as a team, and we have Fractally as a software application, but the two things have merged together. So it makes it very difficult for you to differentiate between Fractally the team, which is getting a contract, and Fractally the application, which is supposed to do what Eden is doing, which is governance, and anyone can opt into it or opt out of it or do whatever that they want to do. So because there's a problem like that, when we get that EOS, take it or leave it, it becomes a problem. Because now people take it as we don't like the team. Instead of, no, the team can help us build these tools, which we can all agree on, that can benefit EOS. And then in the process, you guys can actually do your application, which is Fractally the application, which people who want to build DAOs can just do their DAO thing, which I don't have any say on that because EOS is a permissionless blockchain that anybody can build on. Dan can build whatever the heck he wants. He doesn't need approval from me, from Chris, from anybody. And then if the market deems that what Dan is doing is great, believe me, he's going to get the backing from the community. But when he comes off that, guys, this is how it's going to be, and this is this, and that, is going to be very difficult because we all have different cultures, different understandings of how we do things. And more importantly, that's not how you run business. You know, I told you that. I was like, for a business strategy, you have to be very inclusive. And you have to listen to everyone. And that's what Dan is so good at, building consensus. What happened? Right? I was not very pleased with that because we are building consensus. But here we are. So now we have to find a way to get the community to understand that Fractally is not a bad thing. It's just an application. And we have to get the individual developers to sit down at a table to see which ones, which things they can do, because they're also part of the community. And then we have to get Fractally the team to also agree on the things that they can do to make Fractally possible and to make the system very good for everyone, right? Because one thing that Dan forgot is that we have a team called Hi-Fi DAO that they also want to build DAOs in the community. But when they come and Fractally has, at the system level, made it that they are the only ones that can build DAOs, we basically kick them out. We are forgetting that. That's not a fair system, right? It has to be fair.
And the other thing is that Fractally's asking for money from the network to build this application, whereas HiFi doesn't have that opportunity, or they don't have an equal opportunity in that sense. So that's where some of that fairness you were talking about comes in. That's the important distinction. Dan can build whatever he wants if he pays for it. But if the network's going to fund something, there has to be some consideration towards the network. Like, we are just now as a network starting to fund some things. This is a new thing.
Well, there's sort of entirely two separate conversations we can have. There's Fractally, the app, and we can talk about the white paper, the ideas, the magic and everything behind that. And then there's the politics, of that. So we wouldn't be doing it right if we didn't do the technicals, because part of the politics has gone sideways because we haven't understood exactly what is being proposed as well. So like, let's address a few things, and then after talk about the politics. Otherwise, we'll just be debating stuff about the technicals.
John, maybe fill us in on some of the gaps that you think, because I think you have a better perspective on what nuggets might be missing from this.
I think one thing that could have probably been better explained is relays in general, like Bancor relays and how they relate to each other, because they're very important in the DeFi space, and again, Fractally as well. So maybe we could have a quick little DeFi thing with Bancor and what came out. So again, traditionally you have an order book system, right? This is like stocks and stuff like that. You got your buy orders and your sell orders. And then you've got the, whatever computer is there, and that they match the buy order or the sell order. This is just every traditional centralized exchange, yeah. And then Bancor relays came along, and they do trading differently. So instead, you can sort of think of it as like a vending machine. So typically, you put coins in your normal vending machine, and you get cans of Coke out. It's one way. Whereas a Bancor relay is like a two-way vending machine. So you can put in, token A and then token B comes out. And then you put in token B and then token A comes out. And that will, the pricing of that will be dependent on the amount of tokens that it has in its reserve. So it's kind of like a scale, like, a traditional scale where you got like a bowl on this side, another bowl on that side. If I'm putting more weight on this, it's going to shift the scale up. So by putting more weight on this side, this is token B, this is token A. So as this gets pushed down, token B is now going down in price, and then token A is going up. So when you do a trade on Bancor, or what you call it, what's the other one that ripped off Bancor? Uniswap. Yeah. So when you do a trade on Uniswap, you're putting in token A. So you're giving it more in the vending machine. You're making a deposit in the vending machine, and then you're taking the other token out on the other side. So the price of this token is now rising a little bit, and the price of the token is now decreasing a little bit. What was suggested was that there will be a relay between EOS and the root fractal, or prime fractal, whatever it's called. So you've got a bunch of EOS on this side, and you've got a bunch of respect tokens of the prime fractal on this side. So as you get more EOS sort of coming in on this end, the price goes up a little bit on that end. And so then, when people want to sort of, if they did want to cash out their respect tokens or whatever, they can come in and then, get EOS on the other side. That's, like the trading aspect of it. But it's called a subsidized because typically, how you can stake on Bancor or you can stake on Uniswap? What happens traditionally when you do that is they require both tokens when you stake. So it's like, if you want to make a deposit in the sort of vending machine, give us both assets of equal value. And so they do that because they want tokens on this side and they want tokens on that side, and you want it to be of equal value, because if you put in more on this side, now you just change the price of the token for no real reason, and you're not getting a return that you want. So if you want to put more weights in the scales, you've got to do it on equal weights to sort of go up in liquidity kind of thing. And so typically when liquidity providers do that, what happens is that the relay will give you special, they're called like IOU tokens, smart tokens. In Fractally, they're called mutual respect, because again, you're mutually respecting token A and you're mutually respecting token B. So that's why it's called mutual respect. But for anyone that knows like Bancor, they're just Bancor pool tokens.
So could the same thing it's been talked about, like creating return with Rex would be to direct inflation towards Rex. That's similar to sort of what you're saying in terms of how you add inflation to this pool and it raises the net value of the pool essentially.
Yeah, it raises the value, and those who have mutual respect tokens will benefit from that. But it also slightly it increases the price of respect tokens relative to EOS. So it doesn't increase the price of respect tokens over the board, but relative to EOS, it will have more power. And so again, that's EOS essentially saying we respect this fractal, and then this fractals respect tokens. So there's a lot of importance on the respect tokens of the prime fractal. So yeah, so then once you've got the prime fractal is essentially kind of like the exit node kind of thing, where those who have the respect tokens of the prime fractal can then trade it for EOS, and then from EOS you can get your fiat currency or whatever you might want to do. So, but what the prime fractal's sort of primary thing to do is then that's where this is like the fractal that helps sponsor like new fractals and get stuff done. So from here, the prime fractal can say, cool, like that the Spanish community want their own fractal, so like how much should we subsidize to them, and then the English one, and then the Chinese one, and so from there, that's how you can administer it trickling down. And again, the same subsidized system works for them. So now respect tokens are now getting going into the relay between the governing fractal and the Spanish fractal, and so now in a Spanish fractal now lower down, when they distribute respect and, they get stuff done, then they can trade their respect tokens for governing, respect tokens, and then those governing respect tokens for the, for EOS, and then, they get paid, that way.
So users, like an EOS token holder who is not participating in Fractally, do they have to pick individual fractals, or is there one overarching pool that they can participate in the Bancor relay, or is that only for inflation in that Bancor relay?
So those who aren't participating in Fractally, but they just want to stake to a certain fractals, is that your question?
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Is there one, like, this is the Bancor relay for Fractally, that it's one like parent token to EOS, or is it there are hundreds of fractal units, and as an EOS token holder, you have to pick specific ones?
Yeah. So it's sort of starting off, the sort of proposal is just the one, parent. So yeah, it's like the parent fractal, directly to EOS. But who knows, as time goes on, then again, there might be changes through that.
Yeah, I'm looking at the inputs and the outputs here from the perspective of a token holder who just doesn't care and doesn't want to participate, and is looking at this as like a DeFi vehicle for a return on investment. And if that were the case, I don't see why just putting inflation directly into Rex wouldn't be a better option. Like, for people who do not care about the economics of this system and want yield, if inflation instead went into Rex, they would just stake to Rex and they get their proportional share. Whereas with this system, if they staked into it, they're getting some return of some portion of that inflation, but the people participating within those fractals themselves are also taking a part of that inflation. So it's going to be something at a lower value. Like, there's a split on the output of where inflation is funneled to.
Sure, you could put the inflation towards Rex, but again, at the end of the day, like, yeah, you'll give people more EOS, but does it matter if the EOS price, hasn't moved, or again, more people haven't come to the community, sort of thing. So again, it's like, worker sort of just like straight up, worker proposal. The idea behind that is that we use inflation to pay people that, bring, value to community. So yeah, do we want to distribute, more EOS to token holders, or do we want to, distribute more value to the EOS community, and then as a side effect of that, that becomes a better blockchain for everyone, and then in theory, price follows.
I think it's a matter of figuring out what that balance actually is, because you're going to have, I'm not taking a position here on what makes more sense. I'm just thinking about a different perspective towards this. You're going to have people that just don't care and want to see a return on their tokens and see this as potentially a vehicle to do that. And then on the other hand, I mean, knowing how the inflation comes through that system and like what sort of return it gives those people is going to be important to those people that are making decisions, which arguably are the same people that are approving like if the inflation goes there in the first place. Yeah, but when it comes down to inflation, I think that that's going to be some people's key sticking point, is just that right now, nothing else exists that will give them 2% inflation. And so they don't want this altruistic option to exist that gets this 2% inflation. You could really draw an analogy here with block producers, and the argument between value producing block producers and just pure block producers, or selling votes could even be another good analogy. It's
votes.
Votes, yeah. No, it's the fact that like there's altruism in one of them and there's not in the other. Some people want pure profit. Some people want some profit with, the public goods to also be created when possible. So whenever we're talking about inflation, that's a large concern of people's. And that, coming back to those like three things I mentioned earlier, when we're talking about the tokenomics of everything, like people are going to get stuck on this idea and they're not even going to think about how cool like this one thing could be with inflation.
Yeah, I want to ask the question about off topic. We've got a lot of time, spent a lot of time on inflation stuff. It's more about this idea of the block producer selection proposal from the EOS FAQ page that Dan suggested that these fractals could eventually select 11 of the 21 block producers, would be a point, I think was the word used. So I brought this up in the ENF Discord chat call, and it was the idea basically, if we want to trial balloon some of this, instead of just going whole hog into it, one of the things we could trial is this idea of a fractal, which Eden can essentially be appointing BPs. So maybe we've been kind of searching for a purpose for Eden. And I think the consensus so far looks pretty confident, or in the Eden private members group, that people do want to. I saw one poll that people looked kind of like we should join this. So awesome. But maybe what we can do is like a baby step, so there are two questions. One, is it going to take a while to sort of get this fractally thing really as far as like codified, where it's really launched? And if the answer is yes, and the election for Eden on April 9th is going to come before that, then maybe we make the purpose so we can just kind of ad hoc get feedback from the community within Eden and say, look, let's make the next election not about selecting recipients for funding. Let's instead make it all about selecting a committee that will be trusted with some sort of salary to pay them. And maybe they can, I think talked this before, where instead of all that funding going to individual projects, we come together, or those who get elected come together, and not only do they appoint some block producers, but they also then can appoint recipients of funding. So you're still selecting for trusted individuals, except now their mandate isn't just to be self-serving in terms of what their funding is for. It's going to be more selecting BPs and also then giving funding. But the BP thing is what I really am most interested in. And then one idea about how you do that, instead of selecting just one BP and that committee of 6 has to come to agreement on picking a single BP, maybe they could select like 10 BPs and have those BPs randomly rotated into the block producer schedule, similar to how Telos rotates in standby BPs in the block producer schedule. So you could kind of, yeah, I don't know. That's the idea. What do you think of that?
I think this is probably true of both BP selection and inflation, is that we still need these, like, those are bigger responsibilities. I don't know if there's a better word. They're bigger roles that the system needs to prove that it can take on before it's just given that responsibility. If Eden asked for inflation, no, it's probably not going to happen right now. The system has not proven itself to that point yet. And now we're talking about fractally with inflation, and it's not even developed at this point. So it can't possibly have proven itself. And the same is kind of true about block producers, I feel, with both systems. We could adopt the process to do this thing. Like John said, it'd probably come at some sort of cost that somebody's going to have to eat and somebody's going to have to build. But it's also going to be just the need to, I don't know, I'm trailing off at this point. It's that proving itself system, like in both regards, I guess was the whole point of that. The 6 of us could just pick BPs if we wanted to experiment with that side, but I don't think no matter what we do, if we did it on a call like this, or if we ran an entire election on the premise, the result's going to be the same, and that it is just this recommendation that doesn't actually have meaning.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the thing I think that's confounding a lot of this discussion right now, is that people don't really understand when in the FAQ it says we want 11 of 21 BPs. It's like there's no like I think Eve used the term, there's no stepped approach. There's no like, okay, so first we do this, and then once we've established this sort of benchmark with our operations, we spin up this thing that provides this function that allows us to then, like, you know, start picking BPs and how that process is exactly going to work. I don't think anyone really understands like how you do like a hybrid DPoS, you know, fractally model exactly. It's straining my brain personally. So yeah, maybe that's our function, is to be kind of the mediums of this transition, you know. we're like the transitional government in a lot of ways. And yeah, I don't know that BP selection is in the cards for us or even whoever gets elected on April 9th. I can't imagine it, but I'm open to the idea.
The point of it is there are going to be people that view it that way. And when you're talking about inflation, like I think I probably align more with you that I see when I look at inflation like that, I would see it as an investment into people that are doing good, provided the system works. But there are the others. There are the people with valid opinions that think like, okay, that doesn't come to me, and I have been asking for 3.5 years for some sort of system to see a return on my investment, and they would prefer to see inflation go that route. Like they would prefer that, like the staking pools that were proposed like 2 years ago, they are still waiting for that thing to happen. So to them, inflation, like that's where it needs to go, is to help with them with their return. So those people are going to have that resistance to this idea just like right off the bat. It's unstoppable the minute you mention inflation.
Inflation's weird. I mean, I think people have like an unduly negative perspective on inflation.
It's like BitShares days, right? Same.
Yeah, I'm currently holding the book Sacred Economics by Eisenstein open up to the section on inflation, and I was kind of glancing at it while we were talking. It's like this one little section is kind of interesting. Why is inflation bad? No one likes to see rising prices, but if incomes are rising just as fast, what harm is done? The harm is done only to people who have savings. Those who have debts actually benefit. What ordinary people fear is price inflation without wage inflation. If both prices and wages rise, then inflation is essentially a tax on idle money, redistributing wealth away from the wealthy and counteracting the effects of interest. Inflation kind of increases the velocity of money in a system. If you're looking at where we are historically as a blockchain and what we kind of need to get done in order to, back to the disaster area and overpay and all these concepts, like I really feel like inflation is the right tool for the job right now. And then if you look at EOS relative to inflation of other blockchains, like we're definitely on the conservative side of things currently.
Comparatively to Steam, like Steam had this gold rush effect that, people got paid varying amounts from like, you got a penny for your post to, oh, I just got $1,000. And a lot of that did head straight for the exits. And it also did have, it was like a year-long unstaking process to begin with, and then it was reduced to 13 weeks. So it still always had this long delay process, but people farmed the system. The people who come in for the gold rush also sell the gold they mine. Like, I think that's just to be assumed. There will be people that hold it.
This is just purely anecdotal, but when I was part of Steam, I got paid crazy amounts of rewards for my participation in Steam, and some of it I held, much of it I sold. The number of people that I brought into Steam is crazy, and they were all so pumped that they could earn stuff, and they kept bringing more people in, and then many of them became really excited in a way I've never seen before about the fact that they could lock up Steam, and then even like to be able to vote on somebody's post and give them like a penny was like so awesome. They felt like such a sense of empowerment to have that kind of ability to make a contribution with sort of community funds to another person's contribution. And I think Fractally kind of supercharges that in a way that your decisions can make an impact on, you have a say in how to distribute these funds in a way that you think would benefit the person, the community.
The big difference, though, is one of them is clicking a mouse and the other one is attending a meeting and ranking people, and understanding things. And like the cognitive load goes way higher for this system than it was in Steam.
But I would love to hear, if you guys can go a little bit longer, I'd love to hear John maybe talk about Violet Garden social component to all this, because that we haven't touched on that at all, and that's one of the more exciting things about all this.
So yeah, social is going to be pretty cool. There's going to essentially be a social network per fractal. So every fractal has its own sort of social section, and then again, rewards will go there as well. Actually, can I share my screen? Do I have permission for that? Can I get permission? You guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So again, this is getting the respect distribution. So again, here, the automated market maker, this is where the EOS will be injected into. And again, these are the ways of actually getting respect tokens. So it's only those who actually get the respect tokens that can sort of tap into EOS and, sort of sell it from there or get EOS essentially. And so this is the escrow pool. So no matter, what way you're getting respect, you have to earn it through one of these methods. Then it's got to go through escrow, and only then can you get it. But you've also got the hodl, so like the Rex pool there. So when people earn respect, they might want to lock it up even more. So if it's locked up, then again that's more EOS that isn't going to be going into circulation. Therefore, inflation is not actually going to get felt and actually be in inflation. So yeah, 20% of respect goes into media rewards. So it's kind of like Steam 2.0. Some of the mistakes and rough edges of Steam have now been refined, and so one of it is going to be it's going to cost a little bit to post, and so that's going to be basically rate limited. So not too much content is going to be created. Like you're not going to get spam. So that will encourage better quality content. So the more content a Fractally is pushing out, the more expensive it's going to be to create that. So I really like that, because then you have to sort of put your money where your mouth is. And so it's like, if you're going to say something, it better be worth people actually taking the time to read it. So you can get rewarded that way as well. Also, keep in mind that when you go to the weekly meetings, you don't have to actually do any work. You can't just say in the meeting, "Hey, like I'm just here to sort of monitor, check stuff out, share my opinion, ask questions and stuff like that." So and then of course ideally there'll be people that have done work, and so you sort of just accept that lower rank, but you can still just earn respect that way. And again, unless you get the highest rank possible in that meeting, it's only just 1 hour. If you go to the next round, then again you've got a couple more meetings potentially to participate in.
I look at this and I just think there's like 100% flowing in and something substantially less than 100% flowing out. It's capturing in all these different areas, where people are holding longer than it's moving, I would imagine. It just seems like, the effective inflation is going to be much lower than 2%.
Yeah, definitely. And again, the incentive to stake EOS too. So like, EOS is coming in from inflation, but people that already hold EOS are going to want to stake in this pool as well. So you're taking, EOS out of people's, liquid wallets and they're putting it into this, relay, which has now got the, 144, hour time limit on. So you're taking more, EOS out of circulation there, those who contribute their own liquidity too. So, it's purely the
this
relay.
thing is very cool. I actually like all of this. Like I said, I don't have to read the white paper. As an ED member, I hear practically. You know what I'm saying?
I highly recommend the white paper. To me, the white paper is more like equal animals. Like you just don't get. I'm not capable of understanding more equal animals without having taken that to the park several times with a hot chocolate and turning on and just going
the white
through
paper
it.
Is well done. I thought it was very, very well done. Explained images. Definitely also highly recommend the white paper.
I'm just making the point that I know with, Dan and the team, they've thought through this.
Oh, yeah.
Lot, right. So the thing is, it has to do with, let's work on the politics part of it, I guess. Maybe,
yeah. When's it getting translated, John?
So that people know this, so people can read this.
Sorry, and it comes down to those three things again. And what we're looking at now is Fractally. Like, this is the app, this is the core part of that. And then you have those other two areas that people are getting tripped up on. Tokenomics and the politics.
And the politics.
Or the system.
System changes.
Yeah. Economics and politics are kind of the same thing.
Yeah. So we have to talk about that, because that's I think that's the most important thing, because this thing right here, the application, is cool.
I was gonna say, out of all of those, the account name one, I think for me is the most contentious. And like I think probably half of my pre-existing concerns would just go away if we dropped the extended account name thing. Like that would make it so much easier to digest Fractally's requests.
Well, why don't we bring the big guy himself in down Larimer?
But like right now?
Yeah, right now.
It's been 2.5 hours. I have a meeting in 1 hour.
Why, he's here all of a sudden?
And I have to eat.
All right, how long can we go? He's here.
15 minutes tops. What tell us?
No.
Too late.
Where's our quote? We had 5 minutes for a quote.
I've got my quote ready to go.
How's it going, everyone?
Hey, Dan.
Good. So Dan, we are very grateful for the work that you guys are doing, and we were talking about this in that the application that you've built with your team is excellent, and we are looking forward to doing the best that we can to support it. But there are certain things that we have to talk about before it can become a possibility. In that, when you talk about inflation, when one talks about black producer elections and economics, people become very hesitant. So we were discussing that, and we were trying to find ways that we can have a communication amongst ourselves to make sure that we address some of these things so that we can make Fractally a possibility on the EOS network.
All right. Well, I'm here to answer the concerns and whatnot. I know that I've been explaining more how I think this benefits the EOS network recently on Bywire and on Crypto Dunker, if you saw any of that. But I'd be more than happy to directly address the concerns here. Let me talk about, I guess, the parts of the enchilada to go with that analogy. At the heart of Fractally, there's a whole bunch of fractals. Each fractal is a community with its own token. So a token standard that is maintained by the blockchain natively, that is easy to integrate with for various DeFi applications, is a critical component of that. So not just a token standard, but also, I guess, an exchange standard to make it really easy to communicate between things. And those features are not necessarily Fractally specific. These are just general services that I think every blockchain should have. And so they don't depend on Fractally per se. They would be depending upon, I guess, the new account structure or meta account system that we're proposing as part of this. And so that's one aspect of it. And it's probably the easiest of the list of things to address. But that's the one thing that we've asked for funding from the EOS network, which could come either from ENF or from Eden chief delegates. The idea is we wanted to have tokens need some kind of identifier, right? And right now, the way we identify tokens is the combination of an account name and a symbol. And you need all that data to uniquely identify a token. So that's 128 bits of information to identify a token. So everywhere anyone's referencing that, they need to check that 128-bit identifier. So in our new proposed standard, we changed that to a 32 bit identifier, which is 1/4 the size to refer to a token, which means it's very cheap to create an account because you don't have to buy a symbol. You just give me the next identifier. This is how we're going to uniquely identify this token. So now a token balance is a balance in a 32-bit identifier, and that will uniquely identify tokens. So that's a key part of the token standard that we're producing. The other aspect of the token standard is currently the way things operate. Everyone deploys token contract to their own contract. Right? They have the same API, just replicated on a whole bunch of different places. If I'm building a smart contract and I want to interface with various tokens from various parties, how do I know that their contract is actually conforming accurately to the API standard for the token? You don't. You have to trust that everyone implemented it correctly, which is a much bigger burden on every single person that wants to interface to it. So the idea is all tokens are issued and managed by a single contract, which means you can issue a token without having to deploy any code. So while the tokens are managed by that single contract can then enforce inflation limits on the token, so that no matter what a DAO or whatever custom application does, they can change their code however they want. They can't violate the invariance around inflation because that's enforced by the system token contract. But not only that, we've got another problem where every single contract has to basically implement the deposit withdraw process, where you deposit your money to the contract, and when the contract's done, like say it's an exchange or whatnot, they put it in a withdrawal balance, and then you have to withdraw from the contract. And that's because under the old standard, there's a require recipient, which gives the other party the option to have code execute when you send them money, which can allow them to abort the transaction, which can, if you have a multi-party token contract for DeFi or whatnot, it could halt an exchange, it could halt the name auctions. It was just a problematic feature of the require recipient. So everyone's got this deposit withdrawal standard, and they're all replicating the same code everywhere for tracking these balances. The problem is the actual EOS or token, whatever it is stored on the in one big balance for the user and for the smart contract, and they can transfer it all out at once, and all the credits for all the thousands of users are no longer backed, right? The data still says it's there, but you transferred the money right out from underneath it, which means a single math error, negative number or some permission thing can cause all the people that have credits for the particular contract to lose it all. The proposed standard moves all of that from the individual contracts into the token contract itself. So if you want to send someone money, you can put it into the credit table for them, and then they can withdraw it themselves back into their account without having a notification or any of that, which means contracts are no longer custodian user funds, whereas before they're a temporary custodian until the user actually takes it back. And that's huge from a risk reduction for the user and liability reduction for the smart contract developer. So those are some of the major design goals of the new token standard, solving problems I don't think a lot of people were even aware of, and to facilitate better DeFi. The next aspect of what I was proposing was an NFT standard. Now, this NFT, it's literally a non-fungible token. It's a thing that has an identifier that belongs to someone, and the goal is to change who it belongs to. And NFTs can be all kinds of things. They can be a premium name that hasn't been assigned to an account yet, a premium symbol that hasn't been assigned to a token yet. It can be an actual account that you want to use as collateral in a DeFi application. It can be the issuer permissions on a fungible token. So you can, all these different things can be NFTs, and they can all be used, but we need a way of transferring ownership of a thing. a unique thing as concisely as possible. And so the NFT standard is that it's not a new art metadata system complete with auction mechanics and all this other stuff like Atomic Hub is offering. It's literally a lightweight, easy way to mint a transferable bundle of rights. It's really more like a utility NFT rather than an art NFT, if you like. And then it uses the same paradigm as the fungible token standard for the credit debit process. I put the sequence diagram for this on the EOS community FAQ that we released on Tuesday. So that was what the NFT standard was. And so you combine the NFT standard with the new name system. So the new name system allows you to attach a longer human readable name to a 32-bit identifier that all link to the 64-bit account name. The reason to do that is now user balances can now be a 32-bit account identifier and a 32-bit token identifier, and they fit in a 64-bit index, and we save RAM all over the place. And all the permissions and everywhere that we need to reference an account, we can reference it with this 32-bit identifier. And all user interfaces would use the pretty name to refer to the account. And then the 64-bit and the 32-bit identifiers are implementation details that the backend leverages, but the UI uses the long names. So the only thing that we're actually asking that needs EOS block producer approval is updating how the name auction, the premium name auctions work to use the new name system, which allows you to just buy a name without having to wait. The price will adjust like proof of work difficulty, but you can always just buy it now, which would greatly simplify the experience of getting premium names and premium symbols. But we want to make sure that there's no redundancy where you can have the same name, a long name and a short name overlap and mean actually two different accounts. So when someone goes to a wallet and they enter a name in the UI, it can only resolve to either an existing EOS account name or a long name, and there'd never be in conflict. So that's a relatively small change to the existing system contract. End result is the existing system contract gets smaller. We remove a lot of code from it and we distribute it among these other contracts. People that are writing smart contracts dealing with tokens can remove a lot of boilerplate, which gives more space because contracts code size is a limiting factor here. You want to get that code out of there. So all those standards combined with, I guess, a bank or exchange, that was another piece where you can create a pair between any two tokens from the system contract, fund some initial liquidity, and anyone can subsidize it. Either the fractals can subsidize the pair or the EOS network can subsidize liquidity in any particular pair. And because of the new token standard and token identifiers, even the pool tokens, what I call mutual respect, they're just another token. They don't need a symbol attached to them because they got a unique 32-bit token identifier now. So this whole system creates a DeFi platform that's more RAM efficient, more code efficient, and actually more flexible when you consider NFTs in the mix. That I think it can lead to a renaissance in what people build on EOS, because I can build an auction system that allows you to auction an account or auction art or auction permissions on an issuer, auction a symbol, and it's the same code because it's using the same NFT standard. And I can create tokens cheaply because I don't have to deploy whole contracts for them. And I can, everything's composable, and that's the goal. So what Fractally was going to do was build these contracts as a reference contract, build a minimal viable product for actually interacting with these contracts as a web interface, and just to prove that it works, and then ask that the block producers deploy these contracts in the EOSIO namespace so people know that they're trusted and vetted and officially supported by the network. And And I think that that's broad utility that dramatically enhances everything in the EOS network. It has nothing to do with any of the complex governance or inflation issues that we haven't gotten to. And that was the first piece of funding that we asked for. And, $1.5 million, or it's less now because it's denominated in EOS, but 700,000 EOS to build
maybe
not just the smart contracts, but the basic UI for interfacing to them. And then I think that's huge. Now there's some downstream effects. How do we get backward compatibility? The existing EOS token contract would be unmodified. We'd have a token bridge contract that would allow you to bridge allow anyone to bridge any existing token into the new token standard with a one-to-one mint bridge that's completely trustless. And the EOS token would then have a bridge like that. And so if you want EOS under the new standard, you go through here. This is the same approach Ethereum does to take ETH, which the native ETH is not the same as an ERC20, and they map it into the ERC20 standard. And we do the exact same thing. Now, it gets tricky when a user wants to send to an exchange, right? And they've got new EOS, and they want to convert it through the token bridge into old EOS, and then send it to the exchange. Or the exchange wants to send it to them, in which case they need to get their 64-bit name and give that to the exchange for the withdrawal, because the exchange might not upgrade. But we give the exchanges the instructions, hey, if you want to support the new longer usernames, you can, and this is the transaction you can do so. And as far as trusting API servers, you can always have an assert action that will assert that this long name maps to this short name. So you don't have to trust the API. You can have it verified right in the transaction if you don't trust your data source. And it's optional. If you've already vetted it once, you've got some kind of Merkle proof that proves that's the mapping, then you don't need to assert it. But yeah, that's the whole picture for the DeFi part of what I'm proposing. Now,
Dan, can I just stop you there real quick? That's all awesome. I'm not really capable of evaluating a lot of that. It sounds amazing. Aaron had previously been raising some concerns just about the name standard and how that would impact, say, the way that users transfer funds to exchanges and stuff. Maybe Aaron can sum it up a little bit better. I'm really curious how these, Aaron's concerns and your new system can kind of where the middle ground is, or if they're I'm trailing off, but Aaron, could you?
Yeah, and I have to go relatively soon. So that's why right before you jumped on, I was like, no, let's hold off and do this at some other point.
Aaron needs to have dinner.
Yeah, I have another call in about 45 minutes and got to eat somewhere today.
Give me another 15 minutes just to go through the rest of what I'm proposing. And then you guys can think about it, and then we can have another call with all your questions on it. Because I'm sure that you're going to want time to evaluate it a little bit more, and we can get questions on. Does that work?
Sure.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate you sacrificing. All right. So the goal is that, Fractally is all about democratic governance and having there's a lot of principles that go into fractal governance, and it wants to build on a blockchain that is embodying the principles of those governance. If EOS itself is not in some way democratic, leveraging the Eden process, and remains entirely token weighted governance, then there's a disconnect where all the fractals are actually subject to this non-democratic, non-representative allocation of control at the base layer of the protocol. So I'd like to see the EOS network on a path toward 50-50 power sharing between tokens and contributors to the main governance fractal. And so, obviously you can't just switch it today. You can't multi-sig it over today. But it's more about are we committed to that path for EOS governance once the process is proven. Second, with respect to inflation, there's a need in my mind to separate. What the value of the EOS token is sort of like the respect people are giving to the people who funded the token sale, right? It's all derived from that token sale, and so forth. But in order to grow, people need to do things today, right? The work that we're doing here, the work EOS Network Foundation is doing, it's all stuff that's happening today. And if people aren't doing things today, it doesn't matter what happened in the past, the network stops working, right? If block producers aren't producing, if people aren't doing things, the only way to grow is to do things today. And so the people who did things yesterday, they don't want to be diluted. They want the benefits of the work that's being done today. But I think that if we want EOS to grow, then we need to allocate tokens to those who are contributing to EOS today, not the people who contributed to the token sale. Because I think that's a big part of why people don't want to buy EOS, is because EOS is symbolic of contributions to block one. And there's not enough inflation to offset that. So it's 99% evidence of past contribution to block one. And people just don't want to respect or reward the people who gave to block one. Right? I know it might not seem fair, but I think that's the attitude. But if instead the larger percentage of current EOS supply is tied toward the people that are making EOS great now, then buying EOS is now it's only 50% contributed to block one, 50% of the people that actually made something. That's easier for people to value and get behind, and it creates incentive for people to actually do the work today needed to bring EOS back from the brink. If we say, no, we're going to try to cut spending and have a very low budget, never dilute anybody who funded block one, then we're going to have anemic growth and less interest all around. So I asked for 2% inflation to fund a token of the governance system. The reason I did that is because I know that the governance token is going to have a market cap on its own all by itself. And inflation is going to amplify that. And so you're going to get more perceived value per inflated EOS in a respect token or a governance token for this fractal. That maximizes value to the EOS token holder compared to using the EOS directly. It's entirely possible that the governance fractal could use EOS directly, but in order to use EOS directly, I think the inflation rate would have to be higher. Now, the benefit of doing it directly is you don't have potential tribals and you have complete alignment, but you'd have to get a commitment to a higher rate of inflation to get the same economic impact. Now, I think it might be worth it to have the high rate of inflation. I just don't know if it's politically acceptable to increase the inflation rate, to raise the money necessary to get the people doing the work to rejuvenize EOS. And it's not just about the technical work, it's the marketing work.
Dan, let me cut you off
real quick. On EOS.
Dan, I have a quick question for you. So basically, right now we have 3% inflation. So you want 2% extra to make it 5% total. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what I was proposing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right.
Yeah. And if you wanted to remove the extra token, I would actually ask for, more like an additional 5%, making it 8 to 10% total. Yeah. I know that's above the 5% social contract, and that's why I wanted to. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this. But the point is, when you have a DAC, EOS has a DAC, and the company has all these investors invested all this money, and they got X for it, and now you're in the present. That's all sunk cost. But you're refused to dilute the old people who didn't, for one reason or another, get the company to where it needed to be to have sustainable growth. you can say, well, I'm never going to dilute faster, and now you're going to have X rate of growth. And you can only grow so far. But if you raise new money, right, by getting more labor, right, you inflate to fund productive work. If you're funding productive work, then it actually it can make the token value go up even as people are being diluted percentage-wise. You got more value. And
so Dan, so the thing is, we had a conversation earlier about the fact that a lot of the things that you are saying now is not being communicated well at this moment in time, but it was not communicated well, okay, in the beginning. So now we are making it clear that you want some power sharing. And the first thing is we need inflation for people who are providing value to the community so that they can be able to also have a say in the network, right? The second thing is you also have a list of things that we talked about, which is the symbol standard, the token standard, the NFT standard, the reference user interface, and the legacy token wrapping, right? Which is something that you are doing for the network, which is being done by Fractally the team.
yes,
Okay. And that thing helps community members who want to build applications similar to Fractally or something along those lines to be able to do it.
any DeFi application, yes.
DeFi application. So those are separate things.
Yes,
Has nothing to do with Fractally, the application.
correct.
Correct. So you are also making it clear to us right now that whatever that is written in the white paper is a journey towards something, which at the end of it all, if it's successful, can allow for the content creators and people who are providing subjective value to the network to elect some of the Black producers at some point in time if we see it to be successful.
Yep.
That's all that it is. So the phone calls that I got and the text messages that I got, people were confused. Pretty much that's what this was all about.
One thing I thought was important to touch on and a lot of confusion around was like sort of 2% inflation. And a lot of people sort of, drew conclusions far too quickly as to where that's going and what effects that's going to have. Some people thought the 2% inflation was going directly to Fractally, the company, not the sort of prime fractal. Dan, did you want to touch a bit more on how the 2% is going to the relay and inflation isn't effectively inflation until it reaches circulation. And so, how much of that inflation might actually go into circulation, under what conditions, which is, done on respect and stuff like that. And then again, you've got your hodling Rex pool as well. Did you want to?
So let me talk about the structure of mutual respect and how Fractally incentivizes liquidity without creating a collective investment scheme and a liquidity provider. So typically when you put money into a Bancor relay, you get shares in the pool. And then as things go back and forth, you earn the trading fees. So I didn't want any Fractal or any or EOS to actually end up being owner of shares in a liquidity pool, and then the community having to make decisions about when to remove or add liquidity when another community or another token starts inflating in ways or is hacked or whatnot. So instead of saying we're going to buy X amount of liquidity, I wanted to rent liquidity from speculators that want to own a 50-50 balance. And I want to get more people putting money into the liquidity pools instead of just EOS putting 2% into the pool. It's paying people to put their money into the liquidity pool. So it's like the difference between the size of house you can buy versus the size of house you can rent. If you're renting liquidity, then you can get a lot more liquidity than if you're directly buying it. And it transfers the risk. The renter is not taking the market risk, it's taking a defined risk, the inflation. So now we've got incentive for people to stake EOS in the liquidity provider between the governance and the EOS token. That's going to bring more EOS in and lock it up. And it's more or less staking rewards for people that want to be 50-50. Now, worst case scenario, everyone who earns the governance token decides they're going to immediately sell it into EOS. Okay, well then it's as if you're using EOS directly to pay everyone, and the liquidity providers are going to, they know that they're going to get diluted constantly, and the income that they're getting from the networks offsetting their losses. I don't think that worst case is going to be the actual outcome. But so this inflation is not going to fractally, and it's not going directly to the participants in the governance. It's going to the people who provide liquidity to the people who are participating in the governance by owning both EOS and the governance token. So it's like you're staked 50% EOS and 50% governance token. And if you stake for 6 days, you're getting part of this 2% inflation. So it should be locking up more EOS and amplifying the economic impact of the governance token. So, and then the plan would be to have the main governance fractal use some of its inflation to subsidize liquidity to all the other fractals out there, according to the governance process. And so the liquidity just flows down through all the relays by subsidizing it, which when it does that, even more tokens get locked up as these fractals spawn. So the entire model was designed from top to bottom to maximize the value to the EOS token holders and the impact of the inflation, and to make sure that we maximize the number of people evaluating the projects, not just evaluating the contributions people have already made, which is an inverse of how systems like Pomelo work, where people make proposals, people fund it, and then they do work after the fact, and you try to figure out how you hold them accountable. Here, everyone's doing the work, and then people are recognizing them. Oh, great, you did something that's more valuable than what they did. You sort it all out and you recognize it, and it's every single week. Now, every single week is a lot, but we're talking about effectively a decentralized company where the most active people are basically full-time or part-time employees, and anyone who's a full-time or part-time, quote, employee is expected to attend a weekly meeting. It's just part of their job to get their tasking, to get feedback. You're not working someplace if you're not attending at least one meeting a week. So that's, it's not for all EOS token holders. This is not governance by all the people who are just sitting back. This is governance by the people that are willing to put in time and effort to contribute value to the EOS ecosystem. If you're not contributing value, even if the only value you're contributing is showing up and helping rank the projects, that's contributing value too. But that's the minimum value that we expect from anyone who's going to participate and have a say. Is you have to show up once a week. If you're not willing to show up once a week, your opinion does not matter in the system. You can buy or sell the token if you don't like the way that the people who are showing up are directing things. But that's the idea. You're either in or you're out.
Or you can have a team. You can have a team, and a team member will just show up to participate and to have like a say for the team, right?
Well, all team members are expected to participate in the weekly meetings to maximize the income to the team. The team dynamics are to provide some accountability, and build the relationships of like a regular people that you're working with. So because those regular people with you meeting every single day are your friends, that's on your team. And so you want your entire team to be participating in the weekly meetings, because that's how your team gets income. And then your team reaches consensus on how to divide up among, all right, the web guy gets this, the marketing guy gets this, the legal guy gets this. And you can evaluate that on the team. But the team needs representatives in the weekly meetings to get the idea and evangelize what the team's doing and to inform the other market participants. So if you have a team, you want every single person attending the weekly meetings, because that's how your team is reporting into all the other teams in a randomized fashion. That's how your team gets discovered. And that's how new people can actually find teams that they want to join. I'm not on a team. I attend some random meetings. I like that team. They like me. Now you're in and you got hired, right? So that's it's the weekly meetings are sort of the cross-pollination of ideas. The teams are sort of accountability and getting diverse sets of skills to work together and to recognize the people who are maybe managers that coordinate the team. And only the team can really see that work. No one else can judge, is this manager doing a good job? But we do need managers of teams. And then the global governance is each team picks a team leader, and each team is ranked based upon the sum of the rankings of their members in the weekly meetings. And so that's why a team of 12 people is likely going to rank higher than a team of 4 people. And a team that can communicate and all their people go up higher. And if they're consistent over time, right, over 3 months, they're winning week over week after week, people are valuing them above other people. You take the top 12 teams of 12 people, that's 144 people. That's sort of like the main governing body. The team leads, which is 12, that's the council. That's sort of like twice this meeting, right? The chief delegates are 6, we have 12. And the council can't do anything other than without a 3-day delay. They say, hey, I want to update the smart contract, or we want to do this. They can do any transaction on the EOS network. They want to exercise pseudo powers. Then there's a 3-day waiting period, during which if the team doesn't approve of what their leaders did, they can change the team leader. And then once they change the team leader, they can change the vote of the team and cancel it. So you're really talking about accountability of 144 people of every action, which is far more accountability and far more decentralization than 21 block producers. And this is all from the most active people that are contributing the most value to the blockchain. Now, how much value are people going to contribute to the blockchain? It's going to be proportional to the amount of inflation that the blockchain is willing to raise capital. If you have 10% inflation, you're going to get much more value because people are going to compete for that inflation. Is it going to dilute people? Yes. But the market's it's almost like an auction. People are going to compete harder and do more if there's more inflation until the value of the work provided approximates the value of the inflation that is provided. Now, if some people being overpaid, it's going to drive developers into the ecosystem because the pay is high. It's like there's a disaster and power's out. Well, people are going to ship gasoline in there because gas prices are $20 a gallon until it normalizes. But we have a disaster zone here in EOS, and we need developers. And so prices need to be high to attract developers in. If the only thing we are doing is paying developers market going rates to come to EOS, they're like, well, I'm happy where I'm at. What incentive is there for me to take the risk on this community with this questionable reputation? But then once they start doing that, then the community's reputation starts turning around and good things happen. So it's really a question of what rate of growth of present contribution relative to past contribution makes sense. And so with Fractally, each fractal has a minimum inflation rate of 5% per year, which is basically recognizing that what you did 20 years ago decays in value relative to the present time. It doesn't matter what someone did 20, it matters what people are doing today. And so a 5% minimum inflation rate keeps present contributors recognized, keeps the engine moving forward without devaluing past contributions so fast that no one wants to, the people feel like they need to exit immediately.
Dan, what about the parameters? Can each DAO have, let's say, different parameters, like, let's say, changing the weekly meeting to like bi-weekly or monthly, weekly?
Each DAO is in complete control of its own smart contract. So they can change anything they like at any time. I think the weekly meeting is really to facilitate the rate of number of people that you're meeting to keep the cadence up. If you're religious, you go to church once a week, right? And then you go to a small group in the middle of the week, right? Sundays, you meet everyone, that's the weekly meeting. And then, midweek day, you get your small group, that's your team. And that process keeps the cohesion, keeps the momentum going forward, and it minimizes the risk. If you do 2 weeks worth of work before you check in, well, there's a chance you might not get paid for 2 weeks worth of stuff, that you might be on the wrong track. By doing it every week, people get in a rhythm, and the compensation should be high enough, right? That you're compensated for your time just for showing up. So it's not like you're volunteering and not getting paid for this. Even if you're the lowest ranked person, maybe you get minimum wage for that 1 hour that you showed up. And by the time you get up to, the second round, well, gosh, you're making, hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour for your time to show up for the 2 hours or the 3 hours if you're really up there. And those people that are 3 hours, well, they're actually probably full-time working on EOS. So it's part of their job to show up, right? You have to view this governance process as the process of the people that are working on the chain, not the process of bystanders just trying to offer an opinion. So it's just like an employee-run organization where everyone's working, and this is just part of the job description. And if you can't commit to a weekly meeting, you're not actually committing to be an employee. That's sort of like the minimum part-time job is 1 hour a week. And if you're not willing to commit 1 hour a week, you're not willing to be an employee. You don't get a say in governance. And that's the philosophy, which if you're looking at from different perspectives of, oh, I'm just a casual social media user, this is a part-time thing, it's kind of a hobby, I don't really care, I can't do this every week, I got a life, I got a family. No, this is for people that this is their bread and butter, this is their passion, this is their job, this is their side gig.
I mean,
that
being said, I mean, a person could drop in like once and then not be there for 3 weeks and show up again and contribute. It's not like
exactly.
they'd be excluded.
As long as they show up once every there's a minimum rate, right? You can miss like so many meetings before you're like fired. You can go on, you can take a month vacation and then come back. Some people show up once a month, but the meetings happen every single week, and the people who show up more often get paid more than people who show up less often.
Sure. And you can show up just to say, hey, I haven't actually done much work. I'm just here to judge and like provide my feedback on rankings as well.
Exactly.
That's an option too.
The minimum contribution is your time in the meeting. You don't have to do anything outside the meeting if you just want to show up for the meeting. But even if everyone just showed up for the meeting, you still have to rank yourself. So there's still incentive to do at least something, so that if everyone is like you, hey, maybe you can get hired because, and so there's always economic incentive to do a little extra so that you're not tied for the lowest, right?
So I have to go in just a minute, but I'd like to ask this question and then I can watch it later on the recording. The rank ordered voting.
Yep.
I imagine challenges when you have, for example, marketers and developers in the same group, and the marketers don't understand what developers are doing and vice versa. So can you maybe speak of the challenges in that scenario?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I thought your idea on Twitter of grouping the marketing team from the development team and have developers rank developers and marketers rank marketers. And then you have the fractals kind of ranking each other by their mutual respect. So the developer fractal would say, well, do you like this marketing fractal or that marketing fractal? Which marketing fractal is doing a better job? And it all depends on how much inflation there is and how many people we can actually effectively fund through the system. Now, initially, having everyone rank everyone it's difficult, but people have an idea of like, oh, I see EOSBs all the time, I really like what they're doing, versus I see what someone else is doing. Maybe developers aren't the best gauge, but as the community gets increasingly sophisticated, as the amount of money being distributed through the system causes competition to increase, what you're going to find is you're going to have company representatives that are showing up, and everyone is going to be the representative of a company. And they're going to be having entire teams behind them that aren't even attending the meetings because they're paying the teams and they're getting compensated for the team they're paying, right? Like I could show up and then I pay my developers don't even need to show up. And I would get credit within the fractal for the work my entire team's doing, because I'm paying them cash and that's my contribution. And people, oh, wow, you paid $100,000 this month for labor to contribute to the community. All right, that's a measurable metric. How does that compare to what everyone else is doing? And do we like what you were spending the money on? And if so, then I get more respect because I was spending money. What this process does is it changes the typical model of how a DAO works. Typical DAOs, they raise a bunch of money, issue shares, and they have a big pot of money, and then they try to govern how that pot's distributed, right? So then people do work, and then they give them some of that pot. Well, we eliminate the pot, and we directly connect the work to the tokens, and it just flows. You get tokens based on the work. If you want to buy, if you want to contribute, you do work, and then we allocate respect. And there's never at any point in time this shared resource of tokens that can be stolen. It's what makes a fractal a DAO versus, I guess, what I'm calling a smart organization. I'd say Eden is a smart organization. It's got EOS tokens that it's distributing according to an algorithm that's transparent. But if Eden had its own token and had no EOS tokens, then it would be a DAO. And I'm having to introduce that new term, smart organizations, because a lot of people are calling smart organizations DAOs, and then DAOs loses the meaning that like Bitcoin is a DAO because of it only has its own token. Ethereum's a DAO because it has its own token. EOS is a DAO because you can fork EOS. Eden you can't fork Eden out of EOS because then the EOS tokens that's being managed would be stuck on one chain. You'd have to fork all of EOS. So that's, Eden is currently a smart organization. I want to upgrade it to a DAO. And I think that Eden could become the governance of all of EOS. Now, the challenge is to reach consensus that everyone needs to speak the same language in the same time zone. So what is the time zone and language that is the root governance of all of EOS? And it's almost like an international thing. You have to pick an international language and a time zone that works for most people. And if you want to participate, you can be Chinese or Korean or Spanish, as long as you speak the language of the UN, right? Or English or whatever it is, or you have a translator with you to, do it. But you have to speak English to participate. Now, the question is, should the EOS network have multiple fractals at the top level, and then fund them one for each language, right? And then have them kind of coordinate. But that just moves a governance problem. What's the governance process at the top level now? Now you've got to come up with some custom thing for that. Is it democratic or so forth? Is it a one-time custom job of, all right, every language gets X amount of inflation? How do you say, well, the Spanish community is 1/10 the size of the Chinese community? Do we do population-based things? It just becomes really problematic. But if you have a fractal already, and that fractal can reach consensus on which other child fractals to subsidize, then it works. But it means picking one language. And I think that having an English language Eden being half of the block producers and the other half being DPoS, which is largely the Chinese and the Korean, now they both have power on the EOS network, and there's no reason the Chinese can't participate.
So again, the initial proposal was again the ENF, send the inflation to the prime fractal, and then it's up to the prime fractal to distribute there. And then Dan's just said that theoretically you could have the inflation go directly to these fractals directly without the sort of governing fractal as the middleman. One idea that I had on the call just a while back was, what if there were a sort of compromise between that, which would be kind of like, you still got the governing fractal, but because the ENF is making that contribution, they have a weekly meeting or whatever with the ENF has a weekly meeting with the council of the prime fractal, and then any concerns of the ENF could be addressed there. Would that be a viable thing down, or what's your thoughts on that? I just thought of it before.
My ultimate preference is that the ENF is a temporary agency that eventually just becomes someone who participates in this process, like everyone's business here, and they can represent the block producers and the Chinese community and whatnot, and they can fund various things. And to the extent that people value the work that the ENF is doing for the community, they can get their budget the same way I get my budget, and everyone else is using the same process for getting their budget, instead of having this ENF being the anointed gatekeeper between the block producers and this entire system. The goal should be that the ENF fades away, the inflation comes in, and then the block producers, half of which would be appointed by this system, would have to approve by multi-sig any particular change. And because it requires 2/3 approval, neither the DPoS system nor the fractal system actually has the ability to do anything unilaterally.
You maybe just touched on this, but I'm going to ask. Maybe I didn't understand, but why can't we have all separate, multiple languages all interacting with each other? I mean, in a UN style thing where we just at the point where that occurs, I mean, and everyone can have like a real-time translation of everyone else speaking, and we could have a kind of a global international.
You can have the governance fractal be the council of all the other fractals. So each fractal sends 12 people to the root governance fractal. And that's the requirement to be a member in the governance fractal, is that you're appointed from the current council from an approved.
So Dan, I had a question regarding the fact that the ENF is a legal entity, and they are representing for now they are representing the blood producers, all of them at this point in time, right? So why is it that the ENF cannot just represent, if it's going to be half of the blood producers, they cannot represent the blood producers like they are doing right now? And the fractals can also have the council representing them for the other half. What is wrong with that?
Well, if you take a council of the governance fractal and make them all one vote, and then the block producers get another 12 votes or whatnot, then that's another option. There's lots of ways to solve this imbalanced power. I would like to make sure that we don't build any solutions around any particular legal entities. Legal entities are they come and go. Their ownership can change, like Steemit can change, and so the block producer's opinion is expressed through their multisig. Eve might be able to relay their opinion and communicate with them and get them to sign things, but ultimately the only thing that matters is did they sign it or not. It's not about ENF as a legal entity having any explicit representation on chain.
So I think some of the issues were if they had to sign like a contract with Fractally the company or Fractally the team, right? Or if they have to sign a contract with another entity that has to build a code for, let's say, EOS, right? If it's 1.3 million, someone has to sign that contract, which in a DAO, maybe you cannot do, right?
Yeah, so it's not a contract in the legal sense. It's I'm trusting this multi-sig where they sign it into escrow, they've budgeted it, and I've publicly said what I'm going to do, and then when I complete it, they multi-sig to release it. And if whatever smart contract, whether Eve has 3 of whatever, it's just the funds are just moving from smart contract to smart contract to smart contract. Now they're not necessarily moving from legal entity to legal entity to legal entity. Now, some people want, hey, Eve is claiming this is part of my legal entity, and now I'm going to pay you as a contractor. But Eve's right to those tokens and his title to that legal entity is not actually what the blockchain sees. The blockchain just sees this account and these keys, and it's not the property of the legal entity. And that's actually the biggest thing that I was introducing in the white paper, is that blockchains and DAOs are all just a consensus opinion of a group of people. And it's not, your tokens are not your property. Your tokens are the opinion the community has assigned to you at this particular moment in time. And that has that interpretation and that understanding has huge implications around both legal standing for suing people and tax implications. Because if you change your opinion and you say, man, Dan, I think you're worth $1 million. I don't get income just because you think I'm worth $1 million. You could change that tomorrow and think, Dan, you're worthless. Right? That's just you changing your opinion. And it doesn't matter if you and 20 people think the same thing and all agree that I'm worth $1 million and the next day I'm worthless. That's just people changing their opinions. And it's only when you start saying, well, that's my property, and there's some kind of implied contract outside the blockchain that says this belongs to you and I'm transferring title to you. And if you take it for some other means, now that's theft, because the government is the one that decides who owns what. And the government's the one that says there was a contract here, and the government has authority over the contract between people. If you want to say the government has no authority over the contract, that means there is no contract for the government to enforce. That means everything is just people reaching consensus on who owns what. And that's what blockchains are supposed to do.
That's good. That's a good one.
It's counterintuitive because everyone's like, no, they stole my Bitcoin. Okay, well, that's why we need consensus. So if it actually was theft, like someone held a gun to you and transferred, the community can recover it for you, because the community has the tools and the governance process to reach consensus in a respectable manner, right? It's like the court system is considered respectable when it probably shouldn't be, but when the court orders it, all right, everyone sort of said, all right, that's legitimate. The court ordered it. And if you disagree, appeal, and that's all just and fair because that's what we agreed to is the process. Well, we need to create an alternative process that's more respectable than the court system. And that process is what we agreed to. And that's how we say that opinions are not property. Opinions are not income. Opinions are not capital gains or losses. The only time you have any of those events is when you give me something tangible in exchange for an opinion. Now I've got income. Now I've got, like, the income is the tangible thing I gave in exchange for updating the community consensus opinion that you have more. That's my, not an accountant, not a government agent or regulator, but that's just me trying to apply logic to an area. And this logic only works if people understand and agree and sign up for that explicit understanding of the meaning of what this is. If some people are treating it like property and other people aren't, then you're going to have a government decide which one it is. And who do you want to associate with? People that are treating it like property, or people that are treating it like an opinion of the community, a consensus opinion? You want to associate with people that are treating it like a consensus opinion, because the people who are treating it like property are opting into the old system. They're bringing the government into the middle of decentralized system.
So would you say then it becomes property, like the moment that you're talking about the fractal tokens themselves?
I'm talking about any crypto token in theory, but when you receive actual property, right? You sell me a cell phone, you give me a cell phone, and I tell everyone in the community, hey, he just gave me a cell phone. Isn't that great? And the community like, wow, we really appreciate him more. He's got more respect because he just gave Dan a cell phone and we respected Dan. But Dan just got something else. So we're going to reduce his respect because he got something from somebody and so forth. But it's and so I would have to pay income tax for receiving a cell phone, right? That would be the theory, because I got something tangible. I don't receive income tax if the community just assigns me an opinion that I'm worth so much. It's not until I use that to get something tangible that the system can actually recognize something that's not just an opinion. Because I don't have the rights to keep it. The community always retains the right to change their opinion, which means I don't own it. right? If the community has the right to change it, I don't own it. If I don't own it, I haven't received anything. That's my legal theory of how this should operate. And based on that legal theory, based on that interpretation, then at no point in time can anyone ever be sued over the allocation of tokens. If the community thinks that tokens were given for someone that shouldn't receive it, then the answer is to change the consensus and take the tokens back. Community has already done that with respect to block 1. They could do it again with respect to any liquid tokens block 1 still has. They don't go to the courts and try to demand block 1 give tokens back, because the courts can't order the community or block 1 to change their opinion, because you have freedom of thought. At least that's the theory. So that's my overall take on the broad scope of what I'm trying to do for the EOS ecosystem, for the advancement of the concept of DAOs, the legal theory around what tokens and blockchain ledger state actually is. It's not property, which is what they're trying to classify them as commodities or property for tax purposes. And that only applies if the community is actually treating it as property. But if they're treating it as opinion and consensus opinion, that's not property. And if that's why everyone's explicitly agreeing to it, now the burden's on the government to prove that it's something other than that. And of course, this is all international. What jurisdiction is this in anyway? So that's my opinion. And I hope everyone can see that, I'm trying to offer solutions for the benefit of all of EOS. And I'm offering to do a lot of work for relatively little money, right? Total, in addition to the synchronous calls and the faster finality, we're talking maybe $3 million, maybe less by the time the EOS price keeps falling. $3 million to have a transformable thing. Lots of people pay me $3 million to build an entirely new blockchain dedicated to just this stuff. I'm not making money by doing this. This is all altruistic contributions to the EOS blockchain.
So Dan, and I hope the community sees this, and we are going to post it. The thing is, when it is presented like this, it's much clearer that you are building EOS, the blockchain that you love. You are building it. You are doing all the things possible for it. So as the chief delegates, it's our job to also make it easier on you by being out there and explaining it like the way you have stated it, and also sharing these video. And I think that's where a little bit of the friction was at first. But I think it's good that we have this. We had this conversation, let me put it like that. So we'll do the best that we can, and hopefully you can reach a consensus with the ENF, and we can also help from our standpoint and see what we can do.
All right. I appreciate everyone taking the extra time to have this long call, and all the work that chief delegates have been doing to prove out the Eden process and the responsibility you've taken on. I would like to add, I know you guys have been discussing legal entities and the like. The separation of legal entity from the concept of Eden needs to remain, just like the separation of ENF from EOS. If you create the entity, the entity is your entity for interacting. It doesn't pass from one person to the other. It doesn't represent Eden and can't represent Eden, because Eden is just a consensus opinion of a group of people interacting with a smart contract.
But wait, Dan, when are we getting account recovery system? Get that back because
we're actually getting that very soon. I think we're just about to go live. Todd has approved changes there, so it's up to Brandon to deliver. Very sure.
Okay, awesome. All right, so yeah.
Well, I know that not only Aaron Cox, but probably all the developers that would have a more productive conversation with you than I ever could, that are developing apps on EOS still kind of need their concerns addressed. Their need.
My intention with respect to this particular topic is to have a dedicated video presentation where I discuss a lot of the stuff I went over on this call in greater detail. Now, what did I do? I reached out and I've been working with James Mart and John on this standard because they were interested in that from the community, and I brought them into Fractally, and we've been evolving it. But because I was trying to get the Fractally white paper done and all those other things, I didn't have time to put together the educational material on the details of this.
But rather than guessing at what the questions might be, like maybe just meet with the people and let them ask so that you understand what their needs are directly, rather than, just putting together a video that you think addresses all their concerns. Because like, I know Aaron has all sorts of, if you watch the earlier part of this conversation, there was just a whole panoply of different
questions,
concerns around the account, specifically the name account changes. And so I just implore you to meet directly with the different developers that are, authors of the blue papers and all these people, and just kind of hash it out. Because I know there's a middle ground, or there's common cause, or there's a way for, if it's not, I know you guys can come to some sort of consensus if you work on it, but I think you need to go to them in a sense. And
there's so many people, I don't know which people to go to. That's kind of why it's helpful to.
So you know what I could do, Brandon? I will actually reach out to some of the key developers for the Core Plus, and I think we have Aaron. So Aaron is gonna talk about his part, and then I will collect some of the questions that they have, and maybe.
Yeah, I think Aaron serves as a fairly good proxy for a lot of developers in the community as well. So
Aaron's on my short list to have a one-on-one call with respect to it, because it's probably more appropriate for this, because he's building the wallets and everything else, and so if he's satisfied, most other people will tend to be satisfied. I think, and I believe I can address his concerns, because I understand broadly all the different angles. I guess it's just a matter of relative values on things and needing to get to the bottom of things. But I do want to factor in all of those things.
Yeah, well, maybe we can help facilitate that meeting, and probably with more than just Aaron, but keep it small, but people that are key developers, stakeholders that are trusted by the rest of the community would be good.
Yeah. So.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. Going forward though, whether E&F funds me or Eden funds me, somebody's going to have to fund this this effort. I've been operating on the belief that if I contribute time and effort and pay a bunch of developers to explore all this stuff and produce these papers, that the community would recognize and respect that contribution, and not just feel entitled to it. So, if I don't care whether it's E&F that compensates me or Eden, but the reality is me and my team are providing value. The other thing that is not necessarily clear is I personally have taken no income from anything in that E&F has funded. 100% of it has gone to pay for my developers. I have not taken any salary or profited in any way. So the other, that might not be clear, and I think that message needs to be well understood. That I've contributed 1.5 years of my time to the EOS network without any direct compensation from the network, under the belief that eventually, once the governance processes were in place, that the community would reach consensus that I was deserving respect for what I'm doing for the community. Even though I know a lot of people, I guess, think that I got a lot from block one. But I also produced all of EOS IOs powering all these other chains. So there's a balance there, and I hope that we can find some mutual respect for that contribution.
Awesome.
Guys. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, John.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
All right,
Thanks, Dan. We'll
Thank
save the
you.
parable for next week. Yeah.